So, Michael, of course, we're doing Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers today for our review on Select and Reflect. And Amazon might also be selecting and reflecting on the future of Amazon Prime and streaming itself, because, of course,
they made there be a black elf or something, and it's just their stock is tanked.
Yeah, of course, we are doing Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers this week because it's the end of our 2002-a-thon, and also because of Amazon's new Lord of the Rings series, The Rings of Power. But this is an interesting headline. Amazon insiders say its $1 billion Lord of the Rings series will determine the company's streaming future. Amazon Studios spent about $1 billion on its Lord of the Rings prequel, The Rings of Power. How success will be measured by Amazon is hard to say, but recruiting Prime members is paramount. If it's not the highest performing thing Amazon has ever done, it's a failure, an insider said. So yeah, if this doesn't absolutely bang, and be its highest rated show ever on Amazon Prime, things aren't looking good for Amazon Prime streaming, and things generally I don't think are looking good for streaming. Of course, Netflix has had its issues, so are we witnessing the breaking of a dam, Michael? And if Lord of the Rings just underperforms, maybe we'll start to see this whole era of streaming is going to come to an end. Yeah,
I mean that could be. I mean, it's crazy because obviously COVID made us all think the theaters were going to die. But now, maybe streaming's all going to die.
So this Lord of the Rings could be very important. It could potentially determine the future of streaming as we know it, and also it could determine whether audiences will accept a black elf as well.
Yes.
Two important issues.
Mm. Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past, we give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host Michael, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Luke, and this week we are celebrating, of course, as Luke's already said in the cold open, the fact it is 2002, which means these films are all, or rather, films from 2002, so it's 20th anniversary for all of them.
Oh, I wish it was 2002.
Yeah. But... the thing is, the other reason, as we've also hinted at quite a bit, is the Amazon TV series streaming Lord of the Rings thing. But yeah, and of course there's the fact it helps that we've done the Fellowship of the Ring, and all of that means we are looking at the Two Towers today. So Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about the Two Towers?
Sure thing, Michael. The September 11th attacks were a terrorist attack committed by Al-Qaeda, which killed up to 3,000 Americans.
Yeah, and of course Americans would say Al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda, after two planes both struck the North and South Tower of the World Trade Center. So there you go. All you need to know about the Two Towers.
Thank you. Okay.
Oh no, wait, this is the Twin Towers.
Oh yeah, you got confused, you crazy person.
Okay, so Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers, Michael. Yes, of course, we are doing it because of its 20-year anniversary. The Lord of the Rings, the Power... What's it called? The Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power.
Oh, is that what the TV show's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been paying attention, but okay, that makes sense to the title, I guess. Why not?
A lot of rings in the title. Too many rings. Anyway, so Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers is a 2002 epic fantasy adventure film directed by Peter Jackson from a screenplay by Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, Stephen Sinclair, and Jackson himself, based on the 1954's The Two Towers, the second volume of the novel The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. And it is, of course, the sequel to 2001's The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. And it's, of course, the second installment in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So I think everyone should know that. Okay, bloody hell. It stars Elijah Wood, Ian McKellen, Liv Tyler, Viggo Mortensen, Sean Astin, Cate Blanchett, John Rhys Davies, Bernard Hill, Christopher Lee, Billy Boyd, Dominic Moynihan, Orlando Bloom, Hugo Weaving, Miranda Otto, David Wenman, Brad Dourif, Carl Urban, and Andy Serkis. There we go. So the movie was released on the 19th of December 2002 in New Zealand, and one day earlier in the United States. I think this movie uses more shots of New Zealand than the other two movies, I think. Yeah. Well, there's that kind of running scene, like running montage. Well, yeah, they're just travelling a lot over Middle Earth. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, they're not very stationary. Yeah. All that travelling means a lot of shots of New Zealand. Anyway, Michael, can you tell me what the budget was for Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers?
I can't really remember what it was for the first film, but surely it was a lot. But I mean, so I say a lot. I mean, obviously, one of the things I'm aware of is that they shot the thing like it was one continuous shoot. So I don't know if they like divide the cost of the shoot into thirds, but that's got to be a pretty cost efficient way of doing this. I don't think this film had an unjustifiably high budget, which makes me think maybe it was not as much as I could say. So maybe like 80 million.
Okay, that's a very okay guess. It's $94 million.
Okay.
So yeah, you were about right. I think the first one, again, well, it's around this amount, of course, because, they filmed them all back to back, didn't they?
Yeah, anyway. Which is, very weird. I mean, but like I say, it's a really efficient way of doing it. Well done, them.
I know, absolutely. Like, if they didn't film it back to back, I mean, that's the thing. It's efficient, but it's a risk, because you're pouring, probably $270 million into it. And therefore, okay, if we did it, normally it may cost 350, just as an example.
But at least you have the option of pulling the plug.
Yeah, but of course, if one fails, well, okay, we can back out. But obviously, if you're in for a penny, in for a pound, really, or in for about $300 million.
Yes.
So yeah, but thankfully, of course, it worked out very well, and we can see that with the box office, Michael. How much did The Two Towers make?
I kind of just want to say well, the thing is, I mean, you told me before, and I agree with your logic, that second films tend to make the least, because obviously with the first film there's the hype, and then with the third film there's the hype, whereas the second film's kind of in the middle. So I'm going to go, I guess, for like 950 million.
Okay, what's interesting is the first one was 897.
Okay, I didn't know that.
But the thing is, the second one was 950.
Really?
947.5.
Wow, that's crazy.
So
my information was wrong, because I kind of just assumed the other two films made like around $1 billion, and that's why I went for 950. I was like, oh, just short, but okay.
Yeah, no, the Lord of the Rings, I guess this is a credit to them. They kept on getting higher and higher.
Yeah.
And this one, 950 million. So well done. Very good guess. Maybe one of your best guesses ever, even if you did arrive at it in a weird way.
Yes.
But Michael, tell me, did you like Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers?
I did like this film. I think I've said before that I kind of view the three films as kind of one continuous thing, and therefore my opinion on the film is...
Peter Jackson does not.
Oh, really?
As we're going to get... Well, basically, we're going to get into in this movie. I mean, we're spoiling it, but how he made changes to make it feel like a standalone movie. This movie in particular, because it's the middle bit, that needed to happen.
Oh, that's interesting. But yeah, I mean, well, regardless of what that idiot Peter Jackson thinks, for me, my opinions on it are kind of, roughly the same. Obviously I have more, specific things to praise and specific things to criticize because it's a different movie. But overall, I mean, much the same as the rest of the films. I think it's a really competent, fancy action adventure film, compelling story, very exciting, and, big moments, good characters, all that stuff. Yes, I did like it.
Yeah, that is good news. So yeah, I think I liked this movie as well. I think going into this, I of course, for our other channel, I recently rewatched The Two Towers for, a less than respectable reason.
No, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I just realised while watching it, like, wow, so much shit goes on in this movie. There's so much stuff that happens, and it does keep you entertained, and it does really feel like that, the extended version, which is what I assume you also watched. Yeah, you also watched it along with me, is about 3.5 hours long. So it's a lot, but they really do cram in a lot. So yeah, I mean, I think it's quite entertaining. Out of the three, where does this rank?
For me?
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm almost inclined to rate it the highest for me personally, because I don't know, I think part of it is I do like that aspect of a lot happening, which, obviously you could say, well, a lot happening isn't necessarily the best thing ever. I like the way they structured it, and I like the way they kind of, a lot happens, but it really feels like it has a sense of pace to it, and it does work. I mean, I'm interested to hear what you're going to say about Peter Jackson is kind of fiddling with the structure, because I think it does work very well, kind of, in terms of that aspect. I think for me, it's actually my favourite.
I'd say the last one is still my favourite, The Return of the King.
I see, yeah. Very typical opinion.
Yeah, no, well, we'll get into that whenever we review Return of the King. I think it's the best, and of course it won Best Picture at the Oscars. And
the Oscars are always right.
They know what they're talking about, especially when it comes to high fantasy.
Yes.
I can trust the Academy Awards with that. But yeah, I think this one, I'm just reading about it and the changes that Jackson made, I'm just really impressed, because I think this could have gone quite badly and been the one in between the Fellowship of the Ring and Return of the King, which is like, oh yeah, that's the bad one, because sometimes in trilogies there's like the bad one.
Yeah,
there has to be. Okay, that isn't the case. That all three movies are around the same quality, obviously.
Yeah.
And this one had the biggest chance, I think, at falling beneath that, the quality. of the other two. So yeah, it's not my favourite. I don't know, maybe I'd rather watch this than The Fellowship of the Ring, but they are two very different movies. The Fellowship is like more, they're going on this quest and, world building, and it's kind of interesting to see, the journey that Frodo takes. This one isn't really about that so much. So it's about, the drama, the building of war, in Middle Earth. Yes, and that has
this one has kind of a grander scale, whereas the other one feels a bit more quaint.
Yeah, and that grander scale I think can work really well if you get invested in the story, so and all the things that are going on within this world. So yeah, they are two different movies. This one is more to do with, it's more, I guess, political. It's definitely different to the first, but yeah, I like them both. But anyway, so we'll get into nitpicks now. How many do you have?
I've got 5, but I've organised them so that I have so it can be rapid fire at first.
Okay, that's great. So I've got one, which is there's a lot of mumble talking in this one.
Oh yeah.
A lot of talking where you just really have to concentrate to hear what the characters are saying, and I just think that's very unnecessary because they're not in situations where they need to be quiet. Gandalf does it quite a lot.
Yeah, so he is a real mumbler.
Yeah. Aragorn also does it. Good on Gimli for always being very clear.
I'm actually a Chad subtitle watcher. I actually almost always turn on subtitles for things I watch, which is a habit I think I picked up at uni when people kept walking into the room and talking and like making extraneous noise while we're watching things. So we used to turn on Netflix subtitles.
Anyway, what are your nitpicks, Michael? And be quick.
Yeah, okay. So the first one is just like Legolas says, "Oh, there was red sky in the morning. Blood was spilled last night," and obviously you could say, I think it's pretty credible that blood was spilled pretty much every night, considering there's a war going on.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Next was like, I don't really get with the whole Black Gate scene where they like fall down and then they like cover themselves in a blanket. It seems as if they should have been visible. Like, it's never really clear to me, that whole scene, how they're not visible to at least some of the massive kind of column marching by at some points. Just...
Well, they're very far away.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it just seems like there's like several points where they kind of like they're not wearing a cloak, and yet you can see kind of people in the line of sight. I'm not sure. Anyway, this one's a legitimate one. There's actually a shot continuity error where Gandalf is walking into Theoden's hall, and whenever it's a kind of a front-facing shot of him, he has his staff down by his side, but when it's a back-facing shot, he's got it up in the air. So yes, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I thought that, yeah.
Yeah, and then this is just the one which, like, all the medieval weapons buffs on YouTube have pointed out, so I'll say it now as if I know this. You can't hold warbows at full draw for very long at all. So obviously they like pull the warbows and they're like holding them for quite a while. And yeah, I've seen many medieval weapons film buff talk about how actually, warbows, they're pretty powerful and it's actually pretty intensely painful, especially since it's already established a lot of these men aren't trained soldiers.
So thank you for those nitpicks, Michael. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And yeah, I think in this review, we are going to compare a lot to the book, or compare a lot of things that happen in the movie to the book specifically. Because I think there are more changes in the Two Towers than in the first one, for sure.
Yes, well, I know this because one of the things which I find interesting about this film is that the book, the second book, basically, the first film cuts into the beginning of the second book, and the third film takes a bit from the end of the second book. So actually, the second book this is only the middle of the second book. So they did do a kind of number on it.
Yeah, actually, we'll get into that more in a bit. But yeah, I think just in this review, what we're going to do is, in the first review, in the Fellowship of the Ring, which we did last year, we talked about the overall story a lot in the first review. And, the overall changes that were made throughout the trilogy, really. We didn't just focus on the Fellowship of the Ring. We did, of course, for a lot. But, we can't really do that again this time. We can't talk about Frodo and the ring so much so in terms of, Jackson making Frodo the backbone of the story, which he doesn't really do in this one because there's just so much shit going on. And you also talked about, Sauron controlling the ring in this one, but in the novel it's different. The ring controls Sauron. So we're not really going to reiterate that and all of those conversations. So yeah, we're just going to compare to the book, this movie quite a bit. So yeah, we'll just start with what happens in the plot. So continuing the plot of the previous film, it intercuts 3 storylines. Frodo and Sam continue their journey towards Mordor to destroy the One Ring, meeting and joined by Gollum, the ring's former keeper. Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli come to the war-torn nation of Rohan and are reunited with the resurrected Gandalf before fighting against the legions of the treacherous wizard Saruman at the Battle of Helm's Deep. Merry and Pippin escape capture, meeting Treebeard the Ent, and help to plan an attack on Isengard, the fortress of Saruman. So yeah, you can tell it's the middle movie. You know, the first movie, everyone obviously starts on the same page. You know, there's not intercutting between, you know, one group of people or one storyline and another storyline. They're all together. You know, they go from Rivendell to wherever they lose them. What was it called?
Bloody hell! I can't remember it. It's got some weird like foreign sounding name.
Yeah, to wherever the Fellowship breaks up, and you know they don't intercut from this place to that place. You know, they just stick with the main group throughout the whole movie almost. And of course, this is very, very different. There's a lot of cutting. There's a lot of, okay, we're going from this place to this place, now back to this place. And yeah, again, you can tell it is a middle movie. At the final movie, they all kind of come together at the same point. Not really, because Frodo's a bit, you know, is a bit away from like Gandalf and Aragorn. But yeah, in the middle, they are split. And, you know, it makes sense if you're doing like an epic fantasy trilogy, you know, that you'd have the middle part of the movie, like everyone's off doing their own thing, and yeah, nobody's really, or the storylines aren't really connected. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it can be a bad thing if you don't make it exciting, but I think this movie does make it exciting and does have a good it does have a good beginning and end for a middle movie. And also, crucially, I think, you know, a lot of the world is explored, which, you know, you like as well. And I do think there is an element of, like I said just before, the characters are just doing their thing.
I agree. I think, like, I don't know, like, I like the fact that it does have that kind of, I guess, like, freeness to it. Like, the fact that it does just kind of go all over the place, and it makes it feel like, I guess, more of an adventure. The fact that, like, yeah, like, you know, you look at what happens to Merry and Pippin, it's like where they start to where they go. And I think there's like that for every single character. There's that interesting aspect of like everywhere they kind of go from and to is a story in its own right.
Yeah, and I think you can do that with a middle movie. You know, it doesn't have to be that tight. You can have characters going off, you know, doing a lot of different things because, you know, as long as, again, you make it exciting, you know, because there is a chance that things could meander. But anyway, let's get into, you know, the changes, Michael, that the screenwriters and Peter Jackson made. So the screenwriters did not originally script The Two Towers as its own film. Instead, parts of it were the conclusion to The Fellowship of the Ring, the first of the two planned films under Miramax. However, as the two films became a trilogy under New Line, Jackson, Walsh and Boyens shuffled their scripts. The Two Towers was the most difficult of the Ring films to make, having neither a clear beginning nor end to focus the script. So that is the issue. No clear beginning, no clear end.
Yeah. Well, do you know where the second book ends? Because where the second book ends, I think, is so stupid. The second book ends with, so if you remember the third film at all, with Merry and Gandalf riding off to Gondor, which like it's just like such a random place for it to end. And I always remember feeling it was so weird that it ends there.
Yeah, it's like a third into the return of the king. Yeah,
exactly.
Anyway. But nonetheless, they had a clear decision with making the Battle of Helm's Deep the climax, a decision affecting the whole story's mood and style. Yes, and I think that is true in that this movie is a bit more darker, you know, a bit more, you know, with politics, you know, going in the background, a bit more about world events. So yeah, the fact that the climax is this Battle of Helm's Deep, you know, it's a very much more serious tone, I think, to I would say a tone or maybe just a serious movie compared to The Fellowship. The Fellowship is a bit lighter because it is this aspect of we're going off on an adventure. Now you get the real serious aspects of all the political machinations of Middle Earth, concluding with the battle at Helm's Deep. And yeah, obviously it's a good, you know, not just because it fits in with the style of the movie, you know, obviously it's a great battle to have as your climax as well.
Yes, of course, an idea stolen from Ralph Bakshi. He also had his film end with Helm's Deep.
Great. But yeah, obviously, at the beginning of the movie, does it really feel like a beginning? Because obviously Gimli, Legolas and Aragorn are just chasing after Merry and Pippin, which of course that happened in the last movie. But a good thing about the beginning of The Two Towers, which really you know, marks it as a clear beginning, is the introduction of Gollum, which of course is very, you know...
Yeah, quite a status quo changer.
Yeah, it's a very big change. Because obviously Gollum is a major character, and he wasn't in the Fellowship at all, and that is a good decision. He's not in the Fellowship at all, apart from, you know, a couple of shots. I think that's one of the things that I was kind of surprised by. I was like, oh yeah, there's no Gollum in here, but it's good that there's a clear introduction of Gollum at the beginning. At the beginning of the Two Towers, making it feel more like its own standalone movie.
Yeah, I mean, they also do a good job at like tying it to kind of the titles, because obviously the Fellowship ends when the Fellowship kind of breaks apart,
yes.
and the Two Towers ends when Isengard, the second tower.
Yes, we'll get into that with the naming and how it helps define this movie. But yeah, obviously Gollum's introduction, like I said, does help define this as its own as its own movie. So the most notable differences between the book and the film is the structure. Tolkien's The Two Towers is split into two parts. One follows the war in Rohan, while the other focuses on the journey of Frodo and Sam. Again, you can't do that obviously in a movie. You know, you have to mishmash them together. Obviously, you can't just do Rohan and then, you know, Frodo and Sam, you know, after that storyline's completed.
Yeah.
Yes. And yeah, it is kind of like an episode of a TV show, you know, and you got your A story and your B story, you know, which again, you would probably expect for a middle movie. You know, it's fine. That's the case. Well, you have an A, a B and a C story with Merry and Pippin, definitely the C story. I think that's fair. Yeah, the film omits the book's opening, Boromir's death, which was used as the linear climax in the end of the Fellowship of the Ring, which makes sense, right? Again,
yes,
that's a good decision. Like you say, it's better to have the breakup of the Fellowship of the Ring occur as the climax of the Fellowship of the Ring. Also, the film climaxes with the Battle of Helm's Deep, while the book ends with the Fellowship going to Isengard and Frodo's confrontation with Shelob. Scenes which were left for the film's adaptation of the Return of the King. Again, as we said, it's better to have Helm's Deep be the conclusion, just makes a lot more sense. This was done partly to fit more closely the timeline indicated by the book. So yeah, and overall, you know, more changes are needed to fit a film format than, you know, the Fellowship of the Ring, of course, because that was simple. You know, I think that's, the biggest difference, I guess. Is the word, you know, simple. I think that covers it well. The Fellowship is very simple.
Yeah.
But yeah, I said, you know, Peter Jackson did a great job on the screenwriters, you know, rewriting this to make it feel like a good standalone movie, which was tricky for this, you know, for this middle movie. But I think, you know, you can have to say they did a good job there.
No, yeah, and I mean, also, obviously, you know, it's, you know, when you kind of credit, like, the adaptation, because, obviously, it, you know, like that's the thing that kind of shows a good adaptation, because of course, you know, obviously they could have made the film perfectly follow the books exactly, but actually as far as a film would be concerned, that would make it worse. So it's kind of like an example of how the kind of talent behind the adaptation shows how this is more than just like, oh, The Lord of the Rings is a good story, therefore it's a good film. Like, it's the specific way that, because obviously, you know, like, functionally the story told is exactly the same as the story told in, you know, the books, but it's just like the order makes a big difference. Yeah,
and that is why, you know, adaptations matter. It matters that Peter Jackson adapted it, and it is a skill. It is a skill, for, you know, there's no doubt about that. So anyway, let's get into the movie, Michael. So, awakening from a dream of Gandalf fighting the Balrog.
I want to talk about the dream itself real quick. I've only got one thing to say, but it's like, you know, it was the first thing I thought about, which is, I feel like this film has the worst prologue, and the reason I say that is because, and I use the term, you know what I mean, because like the other two prologues, like basically kind of advance the plot in like a meaningful way. So obviously in the first one you have like the entire story of the War of the Ring explained, and then in the third one you have obviously the story of like Gollum becoming Smeagol, whereas in this one you just get like a repeat of, you know, what we've already seen. And I was thinking, and this is just, very quick,
you need to remind the audience though that Gandalf exists, so when he comes back, it's not, it makes more sense.
This is what I would have done. I would have had it, seeing as they introduced the fact that Aragorn is one of the Dunedain of Numenor here, what I would have done is had a prologue about Aragorn and like his backstory. That's what I would have done.
Well, so he needs to meet Gandalf. Because, like I said, Gandalf needs to be included, so when he comes back, you know, we're talking about this needs to feel like a standalone movie. If you're watching this movie and all of a sudden Gandalf comes back in the middle, you're like, oh yeah, Gandalf.
But like I say, but they could have easily had him meet, because of course Aragorn is a friend of Gandalf as the established Fellowship.
Okay,
so,
there we go.
Boom, we got a movie. Let's do it.
They could have done that anyway.
Hire us, Amazon.
Frodo Baggins and Samwise Gamgee find themselves lost near Mordor. This, of course, is the proper start of their quest together. You know, up until this point, you know, they've been with someone else the majority of the time, and you know, I think so. Again, it's in terms of, you know, defining this movie, the start and the end. That's another, you know, point in its favor in terms of defining the start. And yeah, instantly their friendship is
palpable.
I said their relationship because it doesn't get too friendly throughout this movie, but yeah, it's communicated well. You know, Sam is the anchor that Frodo needs, you know, to tie him back to who he was in the Shire, and obviously
seasoning, that chicken seasoning.
Yeah, Frodo is this, the character with a lot to bear, and Sam's the everyday guy, who wants to get this done, and then put his feet up, it's kind of like the thing is that Gollum joins them, but if Gollum didn't join them, it would be kind of like a buddy cop dynamic, They're two people who kind of like each other, but who have different personalities, and that's Frodo and Sam. But obviously Gollum comes in and just makes it a trio. But yeah, we are introduced then to Gollum, or Gulpcom,
as you like to call him.
I think for people who weren't acquainted with Lord of the Rings, Gollum was the big thing that captured the public's attention.
Yes.
Back in the early 2000s. I mean, he was, I think, the star from these films. I have fleeting memories, of the early 2000s, but obviously I remember, Lord of the Rings, it was a big deal. And whenever, there was a pop culture reference to Lord of the Rings, like, I don't know, in a fucking football magazine, which I used to get, or I don't know, like on a kids TV show, like just shit I like consumed as a kid. Like the thing that popped up was Gollum. Like Gollum was the thing that was referenced. I don't know if you can remember the same thing, but that felt like Gollum was the big deal out of Lord of the Rings.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing is, like, obviously he's like I think he's very funny, or like the performance. I mean, sorry, I don't know if we're kind of jumping ahead a bit, but like I think like obviously his kind of mannerisms, and yeah, everything about him is just like it's a very kind of unique character.
Yeah, and obviously the my precious thing, that line is key.
Yeah, my precious.
Yeah, my precious. I can't do it. No chance we're doing that. And yeah, it's a memorable catchphrase, obviously, but also his look, the fact that he's the CGI character, better than the previous CGI character from a fantasy trilogy that came out in the early 2000s. I think we can safely say that, right?
Are you thinking about Dobby?
No. The first one.
The first.
And I said trilogy.
Oh, in the early 2000s, trilogy character
/ late 90s.
/ late 90s. What am I? Is it a film we've reviewed?
A CGI character.
Yeah, CGI character. Shrek. Actually, wait, what's the trilogy?
Gollum was much better received than this CGI character.
Oh, Jar Jar. Goodness me, God. Yeah, okay, got you. Sorry.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you.
On the animation with Gollum, they began animating him in 1998, and Gollum's CGI model was redesigned during 2001. But here's the thing: Gollum was set to be a solely CGI character, but Jackson was so impressed by Serkis's audition tape that they used him on set as well. They loved him so much.
One of my favorite stories about Andy Serkis is that he got the idea from his cat. Where his like apparently like when he was like got the script and he was working on the character, he saw his cat like kind of doing like a weird like hissing thing, and then he kind of like was like, oh, that would be like a good way of doing the Gollum. So well done, Andy Serkis's cat.
Yeah, good idea. Another problem was that the crew realised that the cast performed better in the takes which physically included Serkis. So in the end, the CGI Gollum was rotoscoped and animated on top of these scenes. So Andy Serkis basically was almost playing Gollum in those scenes. Because it was CGI, but they just copied Andy Serkis's, movements, I guess. So yeah, obviously Gollum was a hugely influential character, and obviously was also one of the most famous characters to come out of this movie. His impact cannot be underestimated, I think. But yeah, let's get off him for a second. Talk about Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. They are, of course, tracking Merry and Pippin, and Legolas realizes the orcs are taking the hobbits to Isengard.
Dun 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 dun. That's the song. That's the meme song.
Yes, and so then Saruman gives a voiceover of his situation. There has been a union of the two towers of Isengard and Mordor, which is, of course, what the title of the movie refers to.
Yes.
However, the meaning of the title itself, the two towers, was changed. This is interesting. I don't know if you know this. While Tolkien considered several possible sets of towers, he eventually identified them as Minas Morgul, the Nazgul Tower, and Orthanc, which is the tower at Isengard. So Jackson's films names them as Orthanc, which is the Isengard Tower, and Barad-dûr, which is Sauron's tower.
Yes.
A symbol of the evil alliance out to destroy men that forms the film's plot point.
Well, yeah, because I think that in like the whole idea of like Sauron being like a giant eye on top of a tower, I'm pretty sure was invented by Peter Jackson.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like I don't think so. Like originally, like I think the Eye of Sauron was like a metaphorical thing, just to like refer to like his watchfulness, and then Peter Jackson was like, what? Well, what if there was like a giant eye in this? I know he's like New Zealand, but I can only do Australian. A giant eye in the sky, wouldn't that look great?
Well, they wasn't just John or Rod there on the score. Wouldn't that be fucking
like
incredible?
So much beauty.
Well, they'd be so much better, Get rid of the metaphor, have it be literal,
Good stuff.
And to be fair, I think it was probably.
No, yeah, it was a good shout.
I think it was more iconic. Well, yeah. What would if the eye wasn't there? Just would Sauron just be in his tower like moping around?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Yeah, or like yeah, it would be pretty boring.
Yeah. So the film depicted Saruman openly presenting himself outright as Sauron's servant, whereas this association was not explicitly stated in the novel. There was a rivalry instead, as Saruman was afraid of the prospect of being at war with Sauron if Rohan and Gondor fell. So, this movie has Saruman forming an alliance with Sauron, and that fits in better with this being a standalone movie. You want to define this movie as a standalone, and I think that fits better because when Saruman is defeated, it feels big. It's a good climax, to end the film on. And Isengard is destroyed as well.
Yeah.
And obviously Minas Morgul doesn't get destroyed. So then it'd be like, okay, there's two towers, and if it refers to Minas Morgul and Isengard, well, one of them's gone, the other one isn't. So
yeah,
yeah. And you could say, well, that still, of course, applies, to Sauron's tower. But we know that, Sauron is the big bad guy.
So, yeah, so that's the thing. Like we know, like I guess, yeah. So what? Obviously, the point is because as far as I know in the books, Minas Morgul doesn't get destroyed at the end of that. So yeah. Whereas in this version, obviously, we know that Barad-dûr is going to be destroyed at the end of the third film.
Yeah, exactly. So you know that. So it's like, okay, so it's about, a boss and then going on to the bigger boss. Can you destroy this, normal boss in Saruman, in terms of talking about it like it's a video game? And then in the next movie, they try and defeat the big boss.
Yeah.
And there's an alliance of course, these two towers. And yeah, obviously, it hurts Sauron rather than, when Saruman falls, rather than just Saruman being in between the good guys and the bad guys.
Yeah.
Again, if the climax had happened and Saruman had just been, somebody who was just doing it for political reasons, like, instead of just being a straight out servant of Sauron, it wouldn't feel as good, to end the movie, would it?
No, yeah, I agree. Like that's the thing, because obviously, I guess it's like the difference between him being like a side quest versus, like you say, kind of like a mini boss. Because obviously in the original version or the book, he's like a side quest, whereas in reality he was more of a mini boss.
Yes, exactly. So let's get on to the Ted Kaczynski stuff now.
Yes.
The old world will burn in the fires of industry. That's Christopher Lee.
Yes.
Right there. Obviously, Tolkien expresses this more, I think, in this movie. Well, I say Tolkien does. Peter Jackson expresses what Tolkien expressed more in this movie. I think, does Jackson focus on this enough? You get that the evil Saruman is burning forests, but does Tolkien's Lord of the Rings go into more detail on that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that, it is definitely like a major theme in kind of Tolkien's work, and like he was very influenced by, seeing his lovely little country village home area become some kind of disgusting West Midlands wasteland.
You've said the people of Stoke. That's what the Yorks are based on, right?
Yes, everyone knows that.
Yeah, the people of Stoke who went to work in the factories, that's what the Yorks, that's where he got the idea for them. And obviously, I think Tolkien is one of those Green Party people. Who just likes green stuff.
Yeah,
like
the real tree hugger.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They conflate saving the environment with making sure there's no technology. It's like when fucking Liz Truss said, it's so bad for the environment when I'm driving along in the English countryside and I see solar panels. It's like, no, that's good for the environment because you're using renewable energy. But no, it's just like, no, we've got to make it seem green and pleasant, and then that's helping the environment. I feel like Tolkien would definitely be one of those people. He'd back Liz Truss 100%.
Yeah, I don't think he'd like nuclear power. I can definitely agree with that.
Yes, or solar power. That's why.
No, yeah. Sorry, I was just like thinking about nuclear power because that's obviously another thing. But I agree. Thing. He would, he's definitely more of a primitivist. In his sentiment.
That's why I referenced Ted Kaczynski, of course.
Yes, of course.
So we move on to Theoden now. So Theoden is being controlled by Saruman. One notable change in plotting is that in the film, Theoden is possessed by Saruman, wherein the book he is simply depressed and deluded by Wormtongue.
Yes, I wrote this down because I thought, see, this is actually, I know we've been complimenting his adaptation. I actually thought of this as a bit more of a negative.
We'll go into it in a bit, but yeah, afterwards in the film, Theoden is still unsure of what to do and flees to Helm's Deep. In the book, he rides out to war, only ending up besieged when he considers helping Erkenbrand, and Erkenbrand does not exist in the film. his character is combined with Éomer, and Éomer himself is present during the entire battle in the book. So again, I think Saruman in the film is presented as more of a threat, because obviously he is, brainwashing Theoden. In the book it's more political. In the movie it's more like good versus evil again.
Yeah.
Like, oh, should I go to war? Should I not? And Wormtongue's deluding him. Whereas in the movie it's like, oh no, he's just straight up, being brainwashed. Like, Theoden is the good guy who's under the spell of Saruman, and it makes Saruman extra evil for brainwashing him. And you don't think this is a good idea?
No, yeah, I don't like it because I feel like it kind of makes... it sort of obviously goes against one of the things that's really cool about Tolkien is his kind of nuanced characters. Obviously, there are loads of nuanced characters. Even, obviously you have Faramir and all that. And, I kind of like the idea that Theoden was, at least to some extent, being sort of more, I guess, like, he still has his agency, and he's, like, kind of being, I guess, more, like, willfully deluded and corrupted. Whereas, obviously, in the film, it's more like, as soon as, like, the magic spell goes away, he's just, like, suddenly, like, yes, I'm immediately a completely different person. And I guess, like, it basically makes it less of like, characterization. So, yeah, I guess, like, that's it. Like, in the books, it's a bit more like a characterization flaw. It
does enhance Saruman's
evilness.
Yes, his evilness, yes. And we'll get into the scene when, Gandalf confronts him in a bit, But the thing is, I'm fine with it because I agree it does make Theoden's character more nuanced from the sounds of it in the book. But actually, with Saruman, again, you've got to make him seem as evil as possible. It really is. It sets up Helm's Deep better as well. If, the king is determined to protect his people and isn't deluded. You have, of course, him battling Saruman's forces, and Saruman has been, brainwashing this guy. The battle's got more to it then, I feel like, at Helm's Deep. What do you think?
Yeah, I can kind of see that, yeah. Obviously, I think, like, I guess it, like, adds some more efficiency to it. I think the thing is, like, obviously, no matter what Saruman, like, Grima Wormtongue is still a... agent of Saruman, and Saruman's obviously still doing some pretty evil stuff, but I can kind of see the idea that he's obviously more evil if he's directly in charge.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know, I would say, I guess, like, I don't think it's necessary, because I think I would say he's kind of sufficiently evil at this point. So yeah,
yes.
Me, I think I'd prefer, because it's obviously a trade-off, and I guess for me, I'm like more...
Well, you do get a great scene with Gandalf entering his throne room, which we'll get onto in a bit. Yeah, we'll get onto it a bit. But anyway, so meeting Aragorn's group, the Rohirrim, the Rohirrim's leader Éomer explains that he and his men have been exiled by Rohan's king Theoden. Éomer believes Merry and Pippin were killed during the raid, but leaves the group 2 horses. And I think this is, again, getting the most out of the story as possible, what makes it a great adaptation. It's a great scene when the trio of Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli obviously realize that the hobbits have survived, and it's cutting back and forth, like upping the tension, like, and then they went over here, and then their bonds were cut. Like, that's a great way to explain what's happening to them, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no, yeah, I do agree. Like, I was kind of thinking that. Obviously, like, people, and like, I didn't include it as a nitpick, but like, people will mention, like, the fact that there was a massive battle after all of that, so you wonder. But
oh yeah,
it works obviously with him being the ranger that he is. He does do a lot of rangery stuff in this film, doesn't he? That would have made for a good prologue, I think. Anyway, but I agree. Like, I think, like, that whole scene of finding out about the escape, it works really well. Oh. The other thing I wanted to mention is, and this could have been a lit pick, but I just think it's so cool, I wanted to add it here. When Aragorn, like, screams because he finds out that Merry, or he thinks Merry and Pippin are dead, he actually broke his toe. So if you remember, he, like, kicks the orc's helmet.
So you mean the actor Viggo Mortensen?
Yeah, the actor Viggo Mortensen, where he was supposed to kick the helmet. So he kicked the helmet, and then he broke his toe. And that's why, and the scream, because I remember seeing it in the behind the scenes, so that scream he does, of, like, pure anguish when he, like, thinks that they're dead, is actually just he broke his toe. But no, yeah, I obviously what you're saying about the way they cut between, I think, it was a really kind of dynamic way of doing it. Yes, very good, yeah. And also, like, it leads, obviously you kind of know they're not going to die, you know, but, like, it kind of still has that sense of, like, rather than literally showing us them escaping and then having the line about, oh, we killed everyone there, instead, we don't see them escaping. We hear that everyone there was killed, so obviously you do get that reveal of, like, oh, actually they were alive, which is good.
Yes. And another change, so obviously they mute Treebeard, and just on Treebeard, another change is he does not immediately decide to go to war in the movie. Of course, this adds, to the tension.
Yeah, and I also think it works in terms of pacing too.
Yes, and this is crucial. Boyan describes it as making Merry and Pippin more than luggage. So
that's true.
they had this sea story that's very much the sea story, and they're like, well, if Merry and Pippin, what are they doing then in the movie? And you're right, it helps with the pacing as well, because Isengard should be destroyed at the end to make it more of a climax. And yeah, obviously Merry and Pippin having to convince Treebeard, makes them useful, which otherwise they really wouldn't have been.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, this is how adapting the story, making changes can make it into a better movie. Another structural change is that the hobbits meet Gandalf the White early on. Another good move, I think, as they get brought before Gandalf, but the audience thinks it might be Saruman. So again, tension is added. That's the key word for this review, I think. Tension, what makes it decent. Then when Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli show up, there's a white wizard, and then the reveal that it's Gandalf is great. And I think the hobbits meeting him earlier contributes to that. I do think the voice modulation to make him sound like Saruman is a bit unnecessary.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that too. Yeah.
You can just make his voice deep if you really want to, not make him sound like Ian McKellen. But again, that is a great moment, right? When Gandalf is revealed.
Yeah, I mean, what do you? Because obviously, I mean, like in a lot of other kind of media, the idea of like the fake out is something that's criticized. Like the idea of you kill a character and you bring them back to life. The thing is, it is something that happens quite often. But would you say in this case, like, there's any legitimacy to it as a criticism?
No, there isn't. There isn't any legitimacy to it as a criticism. Well, firstly, it's it happens in the actual story they're adapting.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, you could say, obviously, you could blame the story itself. I mean, what I would say is, like, I would say, personally, there's a very mild legitimacy to it, and obviously, like, you could say, in that, obviously, what makes a film, having stakes does make a film better, and of course, when a character is shown to have, or implied, let's say, to have died, and then they come back, it does ever so slightly lessen the stakes, but I think in this case, one of the reasons is because, like, Gandalf is so powerful.
Yeah, this is the difference. It is a resurrection.
That's it, yes.
It's not simply him just coming back.
It's not just a fake out.
Yeah, it's not just a fake out. He comes back as someone different, as someone stronger to save Middle-earth. It is a great moment rather than just, we brought him back because he's a popular character. And obviously that's kind of something that could happen. Well, it happened, of course, with Loki, right?
Yeah, exactly.
In the Marvel universe. Yeah, that's obviously Marvel gets criticized for that. This is completely different to that. Yeah. Anyway, so Gandalf leads the trio to Rohan's capital, Edoras. Because Eowyn runs away from Wormtongue and sees the trio of Gandalf. Sees the trio and Gandalf. I think that's a great moment. And obviously
the flag, yes.
And Aragorn sees it on the floor. It's like hope has arrived when it is needed most. Really good.
I still remember that CinemaSins nitpicked that. they gave it a sin because they were like, because obviously they're like, because they don't understand symbolism. So I was like, how convenient this happened just at this moment. But
but it's not. Of course, it's convenient, but it's not like that big a.
No, exactly.
A flag flies off a flagpole, and it would make sense that they're not tending to the the flags and stuff because the empire not the empire, the country, the nation, whatever it is falling apart. Yeah. Anyway, so Aragorn, of course, he sees the flag on the floor, and it's like, okay, we need to help these guys. We're going to restore its glory, and of course, Gandalf then uses his power to get rid of Saruman. And I love how this scene is constructed. Like, it doesn't work at first, and then Saruman's like, "You're pathetic. You think you're going to defeat me. You're still Gandalf the Grey." But then he's like, "No, I'm Gandalf the White," and it's like,
racist.
It's great. But again, every time Jackson is getting just the most juice out of any moment. I
definitely agree with that.
As much juice as possible, and that's the thing. You're like, Theoden, it's bad if he's being brainwashed. He should be a more nuanced character. But that scene again is great, where Gandalf reveals himself to Saruman as well, and is like, "No, I am here to destroy you." Does that happen in the novel? Apart from when he dies at the end of Isengard, when like it must be such a shock.
They confront each other.
Yeah.
I don't really remember. I should clarify. Like, I haven't read it that recently, but I don't think it happens like specifically, indirectly.
That must be such a shock for Saruman. He's like, "Oh, Gandalf's back. Well, who cares? I can, I'm more powerful than you. I can defeat you." And then Gandalf just completely, destroys him. And again, that's what leads me towards Theoden actually being brainwashed by Saruman. It leads me towards, that's a good move. Very nice moment. But anyway, so Theoden evacuates his citizens to the fortress of the Hornburg at Helm's Deep. Gandalf doesn't like that. I don't know why, because it seems like it's better than being at Edoras. What does Gandalf want Theoden to do? Can you help me with that?
Well, I mean, like, obviously he talks about like wanting to go get Éomer to kind of like help out. I think there is that aspect of their trap. So I think what I guess like the only option they would have apart from going to Helm's Deep is going towards Gondor. It is worth noting, by the way, one thing actually that I know about the geography is that Helm's Deep actually takes them closer to Isengard. So basically,
yes,
as things stand, they're kind of like traveling towards Helm's Deep to so I think essentially what I can think about is that like moving forward, I guess the criticism of it, and I don't think it's a great criticism, would be that it's kind of like a point of national pride, because I think a viable strategy might have been to retreat away from Rohan and then just kind of wait until Éomer came back and all that kind of stuff. Whereas obviously by going forward Helm's Deep, they're moving the fight closer to Isengard and keeping them away from the kind of interior of Rohan, but maybe taking a big risk of getting, I guess, like trapped.
Okay, yes, that is the case, but Gondor, so they're moving, if you would suggest they move from Edoras to Gondor, well, Gondor hasn't accepted them, like there's been no communication between Gondor and Rohan. Would you accept like all these refugees? Like, that's a pretty bold move as well. And yeah, I guess, you make a good point, with, it's moving the fight closer, but at the end of the day, if you're going to fight, you're going to fight. And yeah, and so, we might as well do it at Helm's Deep. It doesn't matter if it's, happens a couple of days earlier. I guess it does matter in terms of...
So I guess like the only thing I can imagine, obviously, is that it would, and I guess is what I got to say, but in terms of Éomer showing up, I guess the ideal time.
Yeah. But again, if Éomer showed up at Edoras, and then, that there was a war going on there, they might not beat the orcs because they wouldn't have the defenses of Helm's Deep. I don't know. This is
exactly.
You've explained it like well in terms of you're moving closer to Isengard,
which means obviously the battle, I guess, happens sooner, which gives them less time.
Yes, exactly. So, but that's not communicated in the movie.
I agree. Yeah. So it does.
Gandalf. Gandalf does not say that.
I think, like, obviously also, one reason for which this isn't like, doesn't, this is, I guess, like a narrative reason, is because by having somebody be like, oh, it's a not a good plan, it like makes it sound more tense. Like,
yes.
But, obviously, because obviously the way it is, it's kind of like, rather than just being like, oh, we'll just go to Helm's Deep, that's our great plan. If someone's like, no, you'll be trapped there, it makes it sound kind of like more intense.
Yeah, but then Theoden, it would be good if they had a scene with Theoden like, well, what do you want me to do then? Like, and then they'd have the back and forth, which, they do, you do understand the context and why people make decisions very well, I think, in this movie. That's just one of those
I think this is a rare example where it's not really laid out.
Yeah, one of those instances where it's like, okay, you could have done better. But anyway, so Gandalf then decides to leave to get Éomer. And, I'm just like, I get, like, obviously I imagine it happened in the book, but the most powerful guy leaves, like, they could have used him at Helm's Deep, Gandalf. I'm sure he would have been a good asset to have, like a very powerful wizard. Yeah. I get he has a quick horse, right?
Yes.
So Shadowfax, but someone else can ride the quick horse. He doesn't have to. And I just think they could have used him. Send someone else.
Yeah.
But I guess you want a dramatic moment when he returns, and the light of dawn. And of course, he's Gandalf the White. It works in that sense. But yeah, I'm just thinking from a tactical perspective. If I was Theoden, I'd be like, "Fuck no, you're going. You're staying with us, you all-powerful wizard."
Yes. No. Yeah. I do agree. I mean, obviously, like it's really funny actually, because like obviously in all of the like throughout the entire like Tolkien kind of books, Gandalf just has a habit of just disappearing. Like I know he does it loads in The Hobbit too. Like he'll just like be like, oh, I've got to go do something. Try not to get killed. It's just like, Gandalf, can't you just stick around for once?
Yeah, because if he's there in the actual,
I think he just
battles,
gets bored. It's the explanation.
I mean, it's too powerful, I guess. But anyway, so Aragorn befriends Theoden's niece, Éowyn, who becomes
friends.
Yes, infatuated with him. She wants to be what Aragorn is, kind of like this great warrior, obviously, and also, she clearly finds him attractive. So we get this love triangle with Éowyn and Arwen, which, of course, is not complicated at all, right?
Yeah.
Éowyn and
Arwen. Yeah.
Yes. He loves that when, doesn't he, Tolkien?
Yeah. So I think it's because he loves Welsh. Like, basically, isn't every single language just Welsh? That's what I think I heard.
Probably. Anyway, Arwen is told by her father, Elrond, that Aragorn will not return. He reminds her that if she remains on Middle-earth, she will outlive Aragorn by thousands of years. And so she reluctantly departs to some Scandinavian place, of Valinor or whatever.
Yes.
Elrond is contacted then by Galadriel of Lothlorien, who convinces him that the elves should honour their alliance to men, and they dispatch an army of elves to Helm's Deep.
Yes.
So that's a change from the novel. A larger change was originally planned, however.
Oh.
So Arwen and Elrond would visit Galadriel, and Arwen would accompany an army of elves to Helm's Deep to fight alongside Aragorn.
Yes.
During shooting, the script changed, both from writers coming up with better ideas to portray the romance between Aragorn and Arwen, as well as poor fan reaction. So the fans weren't happy with Arwen, joining them at Helm's Deep. Also, the conversation that Galadriel had with Elrond at Lothlorien was then a telepathic conversation with Elrond still in Rivendell.
Yes.
So they changed a couple of things as well.
Yeah, anyway, well, I know the fan, I've heard fan purists, their one beef, because I think generally this film is quite liked by fans, but the purists say they don't like the whole thing about the elves showing up, and I don't know, it's something to do with that. Okay, alright, okay.
We'll get onto that, but yeah, anyway. So on the way to Helm's Deep, the refugees from Edoras are attacked by wargs. So here, a new subplot is created where Aragorn falls off a cliff and assumed to be dead. So that doesn't happen in the book.
Yes.
And this is crucial, Jackson added it to create what, Michael, that favourite word we
tension.
love beginning with T, tension. It creates tension, doesn't it? Again, Jackson, I think, knew this part of the story needed some more tension and excitement. I guess I say this part of the story, this part of the whole trilogy, the middle movie, and also this specific part of the movie as well.
Well, the entire attack from the wargs is added.
Yes. I did I not put that? Oh no, I didn't.
Maybe
it is. It is also added because apparently something happened in the Fellowship which was kind of similar, and they just took that and put it into Two Towers.
Yeah. I think obviously one of the things is in order to make the pacing work, they had to kind of stretch out this film, which I think means they needed to add stuff in.
Yeah, so you add this, the wargs attacking Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli and, all of Rohan. It works well with the pacing because you haven't had a fight scene in a while. And Aragorn almost dying, that adds tension. So again, Jackson knows that this part of the movie, and indeed the Two Towers, risked being the meandering middle part that people had to get through to get to the good bits, and obviously then you add this in. Okay, that makes it flow a lot better, makes the pacing a lot better. And then this is why when people say, "Oh, these movies are boring," I'm like, there's action literally added in where it wasn't in the books.
Yeah.
To make it more exciting, Peter Jackson is trying to accommodate the casual fans of Lord of the Rings, who have not read the books, who just want to see some cool action scenes. That's what he's trying to do. But it's not a boring trilogy. He specifically makes decisions and changes to make sure that is not the case. So I'm just hitting back at that criticism. Anyway, so the scene also resonates with a new subplot regarding Arwen, when she decides to leave after losing hope in the long-term possibilities of her love. So Aragorn dying works with that plot, that new subplot too. So all works together quite well. Again, more changes being made, which I think are good. Anyway, Frodo is becoming more attracted to the ring now, Michael. And that is, of course, interesting, his descent into, just being very paranoid. And also Gollum, he's changing as well. He's rejecting the part of him that wants the ring, essentially.
Yes.
The Gollum part.
Yeah. And this whole thing is really entertaining, the whole
talking
Gollum versus Smeagol thing.
Yes. I read in the books, Tolkien referred to a split personality, but in this movie, of course, they flesh it out specifically. Early 2000s staple, like we said last week with Norman Osborn. The evil character has split personalities and they talk to themselves. And obviously, I had a good idea. Gollum being treated for schizophrenia, I think, would be a good sketch.
Yes.
I don't know. That seems Saturday Night Live in the early 2000s could have done that. But so Gollum, he's now against his evil side, I guess. He's back to being Smeagol. But how he turns on Frodo, because obviously, Frodo is now his master. He likes Frodo. He doesn't want to go after the ring. He's Smeagol again. He's happy. But then how he turns on Frodo and turns back to his old self is very dumb. Because obviously Frodo, where is Gollum in this forbidden?
Forbidden Pool. It's it's got some kind of fancy name which I can't remember.
Yeah, and so Frodo's like, "Come out, Smeagol, come out. Master wants you to come out." And I don't know why Frodo just doesn't tell Gollum, "Hey, you need to go now. Otherwise, you're going to get shot by a bunch of arrows, pal. So come on, hurry up." Frodo makes it look like, he tricked him. And it's if you just explain the situation to him, then I'm sure he'd be actually quite happy with you that you saved his life. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I've always found this scene kind of frustrating and a little bit contrived, let's say.
Yeah, no, it is very frustrating for sure. Anyway, so Faramir captures them, Michael. Faramir. In an interesting character, just like Boromir, I'd say.
Yes.
Although probably
those Gondor men do make... Yeah, that's the thing. He's a bit more kind of just... I guess he's a bit more like he's just a good guy. Boring.
Yeah. The filmmaker's decision to leave Shelob for the third film meant that Faramir had to become an obstacle for Frodo and Sam.
Yes.
Makes sense. So in the book, Faramir, like Aragorn, quickly recognises the ring as a danger and a temptation, but does not hesitate long before letting Frodo and Sam go. In the film, Faramir first decides that the ring shall go to Gondor and his father Denethor as a way to prove his worth. So, of course, then he takes Frodo, Sam, and the ring to the Battle of Osgiliath.
Yes.
And they do not go there in the book. And this is interesting. Jackson winks to the readers with Sam's line, "By all rights, we shouldn't even be here, but we are." Yeah. Yeah. Do you like that from Peter Jackson, Michael?
Yes, I thought that was funny. Although I didn't actually realise. I didn't realise that was like the idea of the joke, but it is quite funny now.
Yeah. So again, this movie has to make Faramir an obstacle, like we said, because Shelob isn't. And if Faramir just lets them go immediately, it's like, okay, well, there's not really a lot of, again, that word again, tension with Frodo and Sam's storyline, and you need to add that in to make this movie work, and for it not just to be the forgettable middle one. And
and also I would say I liked that kind of the added extra dimension to Boromir here, because I think I remember when we reviewed the Fellowship, I was saying that like I think Boromir is a really great character, and then I said, and it kind of becomes even more interesting when you see his backstory and realize kind of the pressure he was under and things like that.
Is that backstory not in the book?
I think the backstory is in the book, so I'm just saying, it's just good.
Yeah, no, it is just good. But yeah, again, Jackson making these changes to make Faramir more of an obstacle. He knows what he must do to make this film. I don't want to say worthwhile, really, but
a bit more kind of substantial.
Yeah, substantial. Yes. Okay, so after seeing how strongly the ring affects Frodo during the Nazgul attack, Faramir changes his mind and lets them go. Boyens contends these plot changes were needed to keep the ring menacing. Wenham also commented on the DVD documentary that he had not read the book prior to reading the script. So the film's version of Faramir was the Faramir he knew. When he later read the book and noticed the major difference, he approached the writers about it, and they explained to him that if Faramir did say, referring to the ring, "I wouldn't pick that thing up even if it lay by the wayside," it would basically strip the One Ring of all corruptive power. So again, that's another change they made. I think it's a good move.
Yeah, I think it's good to have like the idea that basically everybody's tempted by the ring.
Yeah, everybody is. So yeah, it does remove its power. Like, oh, so you can just have someone just like say fuck off to it. Well, that kind of removes its mystique and removes the corruptive effect it can have. So yeah, that's a good thing that they changed Faramir to make sure he was also attracted by the ring, but also he wants to prove himself to his father as well, which I don't think happens in the book, right? Because obviously he just lets Frodo and Sam go.
Yeah, so, I think they definitely do have like the aspect of kind of favoritism in the books, sort of like Denethor preferring Boromir over Faramir, but yeah, I don't think they necessarily have that specific thing of like him wanting to change his mind.
Well, that's a very smart thing then to add to this as well. It's like he wants to take the ring also because he wants to prove himself to his father. Faramir, captain of Gondor, will show his quality, whatever his line is. So yeah, by the way, is that scene of Osgiliath, that flashback in Osgiliath, that is an extended scene, right? That's not actually in the theatrical cut.
Oh yeah, yes, I think you're absolutely right.
So when Faramir says time for Faramir, captain of Gondor, to show his quality.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't make any, or it wouldn't work as a kind of reference.
Yeah, when he says that to Frodo, it's like, well, what the fuck are you saying, pal? That's a weird thing to say. But obviously you get the reference if you watch the extended version, which we did. And I think that extended version, that extended cut, when they're flashing back to the Battle of Osgiliath, that should be in the final. Cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, yeah, I've never really engaged with the non-extended versions before because the films are good. So
I can appreciate where some scenes like don't.
Yeah, they don't need to be in there. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that scene, that flashback to Osgiliath, that does need to be. I think that really fits in very well with the movie, and helps Faramir's character a lot. And yeah, it helps you understand also the backstory to the Fellowship of the Ring, and just a very useful scene overall. Anyway, so of course the Nazgul obviously attacks Frodo. Now, that means, of course, Sauron, Michael, will be able to, he should now know that a hobbit has the ring, right?
Yeah, I think, like, obviously the, that, like, association, I think is, I think it's like a bit more complicated. Like obviously,
Why?
I think it's just because like I don't know if they necessarily can directly sense. I'm not sure if they can sense the ring specifically, or if they can just sense like something, I guess is what I'm saying. Like I don't know though, to be honest. Like that's the thing. Like so I should clarify.
Wait, I'm sorry. Doesn't like Frodo stand on
With like the ring
on this bridge with the ring clearly visible around his neck?
Yeah, but the thing is, I kind of feel like my understanding is that like the Nazgul, like their senses are like they don't necessarily, they're kind of like spiritual beings. So I think it's possible that they don't exactly see physically; they kind of just sense. So okay, I'm not like
so
totally
surely
sure.
They, if they're spiritual and they can sense, surely they should be able to sense the most powerful objects in Middle Earth, like right in front of them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think maybe you're right. The thing is, like with these things, there's like often, like proper full-on Tolkien nerds can come up with explanations, but yeah, I'm not sure. Well, I think you're probably right.
Look, I know why they added it in there, so you could see how badly Frodo was being affected by the ring and convincing Faramir to let them go. But yeah, I think overall,
it is a plot hole.
It is a plot hole, yeah, and quite a big one, obviously too. But anyway, so Aragorn arrives at Helm's Deep, and he brings word that Saruman's army is close, and Theoden must prepare for battle, despite being outnumbered. As discussed, Michael, before, there has been changes to the Helm's Deep battle. One major change, which was like I said, there was negative fan reaction to Arwen bringing the elves to Helm's Deep. But the thing is, one change which was already filmed, which could not be reversed, was the Elven warriors fighting at Helm's Deep. So you can't take them out, obviously, of the Helm's Deep cut. So you have to keep them in, and I'm fine with that because I like Jackson and Boyan's reasoning here. So Jackson and Boyan's found this romantic and stirring. So I agree. So the army of elves from Lothlorien arrive, and it's good because Theoden, obviously, he has that line that's where he says Rohan is alone.
Yes.
And so then I was like, oh, Rohan is not alone. Like elves and men fighting together, like, romantic, stirring, all of that. Again, a nice change from the books because I think it is a bit more dramatic as well. And yeah, I think it's cool to see the elves finding their arrows too. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think like the elves are kind of like quite cool warriors, and therefore, yeah, to actually see them kind of, having a military role does work. And I think there are like kind of thematic things people talk about like, I don't know, something how like the men, like it works in some way, like if the men are actually on their own. But no, yeah, I think it works just as well to have it so while the men were on their own, but actually there's a sense of people kind of coming together.
Yeah, it's the Middle Earth kind of coming together to defeat Sauron and his evil, and this is the first sign of that. Like the elves fighting alongside the humans, of course, yeah, there is something, and again, there's something nice about, okay, well, we're outnumbered here, we're not doing well, and, look who's come to help us, look who's come to save us, the elves. They're, again, I think it works in the narrative, I guess, it's a big diversion from Tolkien's, novel, but hey, I'm fine with it again. I think that's a good change, I support that. Anyway, so, the Battle of Helm's Deep, Michael, this might be the best thing in the whole trilogy.
Yes.
The build-up with, I love when it just starts raining. And
yeah, that is good.
I really like that, and the women and children like hiding in the caves, and while they're hiding in the caves, you can hear the orcs marching towards them.
Yes.
It's so good, like it's so well set up. And then during the actual battle, Gimli and Legolas doing cool stuff.
Yeah, I like the kind of the counting thing, yes. Like that as a kind of comedic element to it. I was going to say, like, I mean, I think again, very minor criticism, but I think you could say that the kind of individual heroics can get a bit kind of over the top to the extent that they kind of, I guess, at points undercut the seriousness of the battle. Like, obviously, one example is like the amount of times that I think people have pointed this out. I can't remember who it is I saw point this out, but that like there are like 5 times where major characters just jump straight into the middle of the army, and people say, okay, that's kind of silly because like in a kind of serious war film, you wouldn't have that. You wouldn't have like characters. So obviously it's kind of like, so I guess it's balancing that kind of light-hearted adventure aspect where, the characters are kind of going to be fine. That Gimli can literally be thrown into a group of Uruk-hai, like, don't worry about it, I've got my axe. But obviously then there is, like you said, those kind of moments that do show the tension. I think they do a good job at balancing it, but obviously it necessarily has to be a balance. So the kind of over-the-top adventure stuff has to take away from the kind of seriousness a bit. Yeah. But, whatever.
Maybe they do go a bit too far in a few places.
You'll have to toss me.
Yeah, I like that scene.
I like it. I mean, of course, it's a reincorporation from the Fellowship of the Ring, where it has nobody tosses a dwarf.
Yes. But that's I mean, I guess you don't. I think that scene is a nice scene where he gets tossed. But overall, Aragorn tosses himself, not a specific part of him. But overall, I think. Yeah, I'm kind of fine with it. Our character jumps into a bunch of them. Like, it may be a bit too far, but I'm cool with that. And I do really like the final ride. That Aragorn convinces Theoden to do,
ride with me.
Ride with me. Stuart, what is it? What does he say? Ride with me, Rohan.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
and then he said like for death and honor.
Yeah,
for Rohan.
Yeah, for Rohan. That's the most important thing, for Rohan. And yeah, it's a really nice moment. And of course, then Gandalf shows up, and the sun rises as soon as he attacks. With Éomer and the Rohirrim to blind the orcs with light. Spectacular stuff. Really, I was thinking. Well, I enjoyed the movie, but I was like, you know what? It is worth the wait. Like 3 hours and like 20 minutes. It's worth the wait to see the conclusion to the Battle of Helm's Deep. It really is a great moment. And I'll ask you. I started to talk about Helm's Deep in terms of the battle might be the best thing in the whole trilogy. Do you think it is the best thing in the whole trilogy?
I agree. Well, like the best thing. I mean, obviously, like I think you could maybe argue like. Like best is quite a relative thing, but I think it's definitely like the most exciting thing. And I think, like in terms of the battle, it's really well done.
Well, I'm asking you, what is your best like moment in the whole trilogy?
See, the thing is, like, I'm just wondering, like, I might go for something like, Boromir's death or something, because I think that's really kind of impactful. But yeah, like I would agree, but yeah, definitely the Helm's Deep is just, I think it's the best battle because it's very kind of concentrated in terms of like, you actually like, what's kind of surprising is in my head, I do always think of like, because obviously in the third film, the Battle of Pelennor Fields takes up like a huge amount of it. But in, like in this film, and just kind of like in my head, I always am surprised at how late the Battle of Helm's Deep happens. I think part of that is because it's like so intense and like there's so much that happens that it feels like it should be longer. Or like it feels like it takes up more of the film than it does, which is a good thing because it kind of just shows what an impact it makes.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it takes up like a fucking hour. I don't know. Like it takes a long time, so I'm not really sure about that. But yeah, it is a great battle. I think on my power rankings, it's number 2 to when Rohan, on the Battle of Minas Tirith.
Yeah.
The Rohan riders charge at the orcs.
Yeah, they do like people being saved by charges from Rohan, don't they? In this series.
Yeah. But that's better with where Theoden gives them the pump up speech. And obviously Gondor's like, that Rohan won't come, and then Rohan comes to save the day, and of course the elves, they come before the battle, Rohan comes during the battle, and I think that's a really great moment and probably my favourite. But this is probably number 2, and obviously Isengard is destroyed by the Ents, which again that concludes Merry and Pippin's story, makes it more of a defines this movie more as a standalone movie, and Gollum obviously takes Frodo and Sam to her, and again, watching that final scene, I'm like, it's a really nice cliffhanger, really, it sets up the movie so well. The anticipation must have been great because, obviously now Gollum is against them, and that is a, good conclusion, and it works well as a single movie because of that as well. Like Gollum, is he going to be on their side? Like, can you really trust this guy? But at the end of the movie, it's like, no, he has made his decision. He is going to betray them, and, it's all set up for the third movie. So I really like the ending with Gollum and Frodo and Sam's storyline as well.
No, yeah. And I mean, also, of course, I agree with you that the Gollum thing is good cliffhanger. But then also, of course, you get the cute moment with Sam and Frodo where like talking about, do you think they were singing songs about us, Frodo?
Yes. Again,
Frodo wouldn't have got far without Sam. No, Mr. Frodo, I was being serious. So was I. What a bromance.
I know, it's very nice. It's very nice. So let's conclude now, Michael. You go first.
Yeah, okay. So this film is very good. Obviously, like, part of the credit has to go to the kind of source material. Obviously, like, that's a big thing with any kind of adaptation of a book. Like, it helps that the book is good. But obviously, what's really nice about this is that it does depart from the book in some ways, and in ways that work. Like, basically, I think pretty much every decision, obviously there are some areas where I slightly disagree, but pretty much every decision was made for the better. I do have, like I say, just a few kind of minor things, for instance, where I think, like maybe the characterization was not quite how I would have had it. But overall, I mean, it's really, really solid. I think I'm going to give it a 9. I mean, obviously that's a pretty high score. There are reasons I'm not giving it a 9.5 or, like a high 9 or a 10. But yeah, just a normal 9 for me.
Yeah, I'm going to give this movie an 8.5, which is the same as I gave The Fellowship of the Ring, I believe. Because, yeah, I think, look, this, again, is a very solid movie. I could have given it a 9 as well. The reason why I probably didn't give it a 9 is because, I don't know, there isn't as many there is quite a few exciting moments. It's done very well, but yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't reach the heights of like Return of the King for me. But anyway, I think, again, it's still really impressive. Like, of course, they weren't even intending to make a middle movie, were they?
No.
And so Peter Jackson had a massive challenge, making this movie because, firstly, you had to create it when you weren't going to create it in the first place. And obviously, he had to have a movie with a beginning and an end and tension throughout to keep people interested. And he did it, and that is a credit to him. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 3 out of 4 stars, and I just want to read his review because I think it's decent. He describes it as one of the most spectacular swashbucklers ever made, and stating it is not faithful to the spirit of Tolkien and misplaces much of the charm and whimsy of the books, but it stands on its own as a visionary thriller. And that's the thing, yes, when it goes back to what I was kind of saying about, this movie is trying to be exciting. That's what it's trying to be. It does replace a lot of the whimsy and the charm of the book. It is more of an action movie. So yeah, Jackson understands that, okay, to keep people interested, I've got to add all this action in. And yeah, I think that is a good move because, the action can be, you can have action and it could also, fit in well with the story and, help with the characterization of the characters. So yeah, I think, that's absolutely fine. And so yeah, again, he had a big challenge. I was going to say Michael Jackson. He had a big challenge, Peter Jackson, and he pulled it off. The more talented of the Jacksons, for sure. Anyway, Michael, we are now, I think, going to predict tentatively what the Amazon Prime Lord of the Rings show is going to get on Rotten Tomatoes, okay?
Oh, okay, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, so I don't know when we'll have an answer for this, but we're going to take a stab at it. So, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got my number as well.
Okay.
So 3, 2, 1, 89.
62.
Oh wow, fuck! How do you 62?
Well, I'm just like, I don't know, like I'm just thinking it could be like not good or like it could be average. Like I'm not sure. Literally, I have no reason to.
Well, I mean, they're pumping so much money into it, so I have to assume it's going to be on some level good.
I mean, to be fair, like actually, I mean, maybe I feel like TV shows often get kind of slightly inflated ratings, so maybe you will be right.
I don't know.
But yeah, I don't know. Like I guess I'm just kind of banking on it being maybe a little bit disappointing. It's all about that black elf. That's just
the black elf takes it down at least 25 points. Yeah.
Yes, that's the rules.
Yeah. We're not gonna do the audience rating on this on Rotten Tomatoes because that'll be like in the single digits.
Yeah.
Yeah. People have already decided they're not going to like it, I think, based on the Black Elf. Yes. But anyway, Michael, the first episode is going to be released on the 2nd of September. Are you going to be watching? Do you have Amazon Prime?
Well, I'm not going to be watching because I think I mentioned to you before in a recent conversation we had that I'm very conservative with what TV shows. Okay, that sounds like inappropriate in like the Black Elf. What I mean is I'm very restrictive in terms of like I only. But
it's Lord of the Rings, Michael. It's your favorite thing, and I'm bringing it back.
You got to bear in mind though. I also I did watch Game of Thrones, so I have experience of getting invested in fantasy adventure TV shows, and then, so even if it is good,
you already know where it's going to go though.
That is true. Yeah, I do know. Yeah, I suppose that's it. Yeah, like they probably, hopefully, can't fuck up the ending.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but I won't watch it immediately. Like, I'm not going to watch it as it comes out. For one reason, apart from anything else, I always find like the kind of waiting for new installments of kind of like releases to be annoying. Like you watch it and then you got to wait for a week. So I'm not going to be too much of a rush.
Peter Jackson showed that that's the thing. People may get mad if there's changes, but Peter Jackson, I think, has showed, especially with this movie, that you can make changes and you can make it better for the medium, which is film in his case. So I think although
I think it's easier to adapt for TV because you obviously like TV show structures don't have to be the same as film structures. Yeah,
perhaps. So yeah, we'll see if that's good. But yeah, Michael, what are we reviewing next week?
Next week we're reviewing a B movie. So we're really taking. I mean, honestly, I view it as an improvement because we're finally escaping the clutches of 2002.
Yeah, no more 2002. We're going all the way to 2007, baby. The last year before everything fell apart. Anyway, so join us next week for B-Movie. Who have you been, Michael?
I've been Michael.
I've been Luke. Thanks for listening to our review of The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and goodbye.
Goodbye.